Hello there, people of the internet. I recently went out and picked up something that I've never owned before. I have used these style of rifles before, but I have never owned one myself until now. I was down at my local gun store and I saw this thing down there on consignment, and I was like, well, goddamn, I'm going to go ahead and pick me up that right there. This right here is a Rossi R92 lever action, chambered in 357/38 special. It'll take either or. I saw this down there and I figured, you know what, that would make a fantastic little carbine to get my hands on. 38 special, 357, with where I'm at, this right here will make a fantastic little hunting rifle, especially because it's just a short carbine version. This thing is extraordinarily lightweight, extraordinarily handy. Like, I can lug this thing around all day long, every day. With it being a pistol caliber cartridge, the recoil is not all that intense. 38 special can be used to get small game without completely destroying it, or if I feel like going up to anything medium game, I can use the 357 and that'll be more than adequate to take on the game that we have around here in the area that I'm in. But I figured this would be a fun little video to make because I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the development behind these old lever action rifles, just because it'd be a really interesting piece to have on my channel. So we're going to start off with like the first real lever action rifle that started this whole series, the 1860 Henry, chambered in a 44 caliber round that was rimfire. Anyone who knows anything about rimfire cartridges knows that the rimfire cartridge needs to be kind of on the weak side because the brass needs to be kind of on the weak side. So the brass can crimp down on the priming compound, which is inside of the rim, so we can ignite the powder and launch the cartridge. The brass has to be thin because if the brass is too thick, then the firing pin will not be able to smash it down effectively enough to ignite that priming compound. And since the brass is thin, the round has to be weak. Now, Henry and Winchester, who were working together at the time on these lever action rifles, they ended up having some sort of falling out, and Henry and Winchester ended up splitting. Winchester had all the rights and the patents and whatnot to these lever action rifles, so they started making it themselves. They adopted what the original Henrys had was a system of loading the magazine tube to where you had to like pull the follower up to the front of the muzzle right here, and you had to like spin the muzzle out of the way, load them one at a time down there. Like the follower, as it traveled down, got in the way of your hand. If your hand was in the way, then the rifle wouldn't be able to feed because there'd be no spring tension, so you had to kind of like maneuver your hand around on that thing. It wasn't a very good system. Whenever you were loading the thing, your hand was oftentimes up here by the muzzle, and that's definitely not what you want, especially if you have a round in the chamber. 1866, whenever Winchester started making these rifles themselves, they adopted this right here. This is your Kingsgate, far more effective system in my opinion. You can just kind of shove them, or shove the rounds into the receiver from, you know, back far away from the muzzle. You don't have to worry about going all the way out over that way or messing with the follower and spring manually. You just shove your rounds directly into the receiver right here. They were still rocking the same rimfire cartridge in 1866, but in 1873, Winchester basically using the same exact rifle with a different kind of metal receiver. I believe the original receivers were bronze. They might have been brass, but I think that they were bronze. Winchester improved that by moving to either an iron or a steel receiver. I can't quite remember which it is, but a far more durable receiver, and they upgraded to a center fire cartridge. With the center fire cartridge, they were able to make rounds much more powerful because they didn't have to worry about crimping the brass on the actual round itself in order to ignite it. Not only that, but center fire cartridges can be reloaded much easier. Winchester actually had a reload kit that they sold with their rifles. But other than the loading system, the Kingsgate, the actual mechanics of the rifle were basically identical to the original 1860 Henry. It's just kind of a toggle locking system. Whenever you pull the lever down, it breaks that straight inline toggle lock that 1860 was using at that time. It wasn't until later on development that they improved on that. I'm not going to say changed it, but they improved on that. So 1873, that's whenever they got the centerfire cartridge. Go ahead and make sure I got the year right here. Yeah, 1876. That was whenever they had the same mechanical toggle lock system, same exact everything of the rifle, basically identical, but they scaled it up to be a much larger, more powerful rifle. The original 44 Henry rimfire round was obviously a pretty pathetic round for what people were looking for, just because it was a rimfiring. It couldn't be very powerful. The centerfire cartridge that came after that was also not all that powerful. It was more so an improvement on the actual firing mechanics of the firearm, but in 1876, they scaled up the rifle, scaled up the cartridges that they were using. You were able to fire much larger projectiles, much more power going downrange than you were able to before. In 1886, I believe that was the year, they decided to strengthen the actual mechanisms of the gun, and instead of just having the single toggle lock system, they adopted basically this right here. It is two, what would you call that? Big stainless steel locking lugs. That's what I'm going to go ahead and call them. They lock into the rear of the bolt, which you can see right there. That is the little locking surface on these things. Whenever you close the lever, you can see those little locking surfaces raise up, and there locks the bolt in place. This is a very, very strong system. And they were able to push their rifles to fire even larger and more powerful cartridges. The 1876 did fire some powerful cartridges, but it was really pushing that toggle lock system to its absolute limits. That's whenever they decided to go ahead and incorporate some sort of secondary locking feature along with the original toggle lock system. Now, right now I'm talking about the 1886. Yeah, this right here is a 92 model. That's because in 1892 they decided to scale these back down for pistol caliber cartridges. The original 73s, the centerfire cartridges in 73s, yeah, those were very effective, still pretty popular, but this right here is just a newer technology, and they wanted to offer it in a more advanced package. I guess it's the same way how the M1 Garand is still very effective and useful nowadays, but something like an AR-15 would be the next stage of cutting-edge technology. So I guess that is the closest equivalent that I can say to this. So 1892, they scaled that system down to basically pistol caliber cartridges. This right here is chambered in 357/38, which is pistol caliber cartridges. So it has the 86 mechanics, just scaled down a bit, and that is why this right here is considered an 1892. That's why it's called the Rossi R92. Now, I actually have another lever action out here with me. This is my father's, which he never touches. This right here is a 1894. 1894 is the golden number because that is the year where Winchester went from firing black powder rounds to a new smokeless powder round. The 1894 pattern was chambered in the venerable 30-30. Now, originally I thought the 30-30 was a black powder round just because of the name designation on it. 30 caliber round, 30 grains of powder. That's how they used to designate their cartridges back in the day, but apparently I'm incorrect on that. 30-30 was designed from the ground up to be a smokeless powder round, and they sold several million of these rifles. This right here is a Winchester 94 AE. Yeah, 94 AE. I'm not positive on what AE stands for, but this right here is not an original 94. My father bought this in like the 80s or something like that, so it is very, very much not a new gun, but very, very much not a old school original Winchester 94, but the action is still the same. Now, the fundamental mechanics behind the 1886 and the 1892, they share a lot of similarities with the 94, except the 94, the locking system is actually in the rear, and it has a built-in transfer bar that goes up into the firing pin. You can see how at the back of the locking surface right there, you can actually see the transfer bar that smacks into the firing pin that's in the actual bolt. Whenever I cycle the rifle, you can see how that locking surface pops down, and now the bolt can freely move in and out. Same general idea, same general mechanic, locking surface holding the bolt in, and it moves out of the way whenever you pull the lever down, except this right here is just a one single piece, easier to manufacture. Just a lot of simplicity in the 94 compared to the 92. But I'm not talking about the 94, I'm talking about the 92 because that is what I have today. My goodness, I just covered, what, 40 years of lever action development. I'm going to say the 1895 was basically an 1894 mechanical action, but it had a box magazine on it as opposed to a tube magazine. Spitzer cartridges are pointed bullets. That's what I'm going to call them if you don't know what Spitzer cartridges are. They were becoming much more popular, much more available, etc., etc. And shoving those into a tube magazine, you have the pointed round of one round into the primer of the round in front of it, and you have the very real situation where you might potentially have that round detonate in the chamber, or not in the chamber, in the magazine tube. And you definitely do not want that to happen. That's why with these rifles right here, they're typically soft nose, flat nose, round nose, something like that. You don't fire Spitzer cartridges out of it. But Spitzer cartridges were becoming much, much more popular. So the 95, not near as popular as the 94, but the 95 had a box magazine on it, so you could go ahead and fire some of your more popular Spitzer cartridges out of it. I have no idea how long they continue to do that for, but like I said, the 94 by far was the most popular lever action style back there in that time. Now, of course, Winchester, the patents for the rifles are basically null and void at this point, and anybody can make them. That's why we have Rossi over here making them. According to the rifle right here, Rossi is a company in Brazil made by CBC. Fantastic. Brastec International, Brainbridge, Georgia. That is where this rifle right here came from, apparently. But there is a pretty substantial amount of new made rifles out there that are just modeled after these older patterns. That's why this one right here is a 92. That one right there, the 3030, is a 94. I'm not sure if there's any 92s or 86s out there that are chambered in 3030. I feel like that'd be a neat little hybrid to have. I'd like to get my hands on a original front-loading 1860 Henry, just because I think that'd be really cool to have. But unfortunately, the ammunition is quite significantly difficult to find. Now, the 3030 is also actually quite difficult to find right now. I can find 38 Special and 357 Magnum pretty damn easily, and I always could, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted this rifle. For my situation, it's just going to make such a good little universal rifle. I have some 38 Special here. We're going to go ahead and lob a couple of rounds downrange just because I'm out here at the gun range. My hands are cold, and loading this thing's going to not be very fun. This right here is, well, the spring in this right here, the Kingsgate, is still quite stiff, but as you can see, you just kind of load your rounds directly into the side of the receiver right here. Back whenever this technology came out with the 1860 Henry, it was still very, very common for people to be sporting muzzle loaders for either defensive or offensive purposes. So if you had yourself, God, that spring sucks. If you had yourself one of these lever action rifles going up against people that had muzzle loaders, you had a significant and distinct difference. Back whenever the 1860 was being used during the Civil War, they called it the rifle that you could load on Sunday and shoot all week. I believe that's the designation. I could be wrong by a couple of words on that. I'm not 100% positive on it. But I got a couple of rounds of 38 Special. I got 3 rounds of 38 Special apparently. But I've already fired this thing. I've already zeroed it. I already know it works. This right here is just one of those rifles that I felt like getting my hands on. We have a 9+1 round capacity in this thing, so if I do decide to take it hunting, I'll have to use some sort of catch or stop or something inside the magazine tube just to go ahead and limit my rounds. But this is 38 Special. After that, where's my 357 Magnum rounds at? I got 2 rounds of soft point 357 Magnum that we're going to launch downrange. I will say that on the top of the bolt right here, we have a little safety. This right here does not stop the trigger from functioning. In fact, the only thing it does is block the firing pin from actually striking the rounds. You can see the hammer in the back right here. It is not able to depress the firing pin because we have our safety on. If I were to pull that back, disengage our safety, now the hammer would be able to depress the firing pin, and if there was something in the chamber, it would fire. All right. Now comes the fun part. I want to say that I was surprised at the accuracy of 38 Special at 100 yards, because that's what I took it out to zero this thing at. So I also want to say that just for fun, I tried wad cutter ammunition where the actual projectile is all the way down into the brass. I tried wad cutter 38 and this did not work. Wad cutter 38 will not run in your lever action. It takes actual 38 Special, just standard projectiles. All right, here we go. Whenever I fire this thing, My God, 38 special out of a rifle just has 0 recoil behind it. I mean, 38 special out of a handgun basically has 0 recoil behind it as well. This would make... Back in the day, whenever you had one of these going against people with muzzle loaders, I 100% understand how much, like, just the dramatic advantage that you would have with one of these rifles compared to people with muzzle loaders. Alright, there's our 38 special. Wow, I stacked a tiny little group on that target. Go ahead and grab my brass here. Straight wall pistol caliber cartridges are very easy to reload, and they can be reloaded a lot. Especially when you have low power rounds like a 38 special that don't stretch the brass a lot. Alright, now we're going to run some 357 Magnum. Same rifle, same everything, just a different kind of ammunition. This is basically like 38 longs. It's just a more powerful version of the 38. That is why the 38 special in the 357 can be fired out of any rifle or handgun chambered in 357. It's just a shorter straight wall cartridge. I used to think back before I knew anything about firearms that if it was the same caliber that it could be fired. So I remember growing up back at like 8, 10 years old, I thought the 7.62 by 39 and the 54 rimmed were interchangeable just because they were both 7.62 caliber cartridges. After somebody had told me about the situation between the 357 and the 38, that's just what I pieced together. But it's because of the neck on those things that they are definitely 100% not interchangeable. Whenever you have straight wall cartridges, you don't run into issues like that because you don't have to worry about the neck profile in the actual chamber, and you don't have this open gap right there. I bet you probably could manage somehow to fire 7.62 by 39 in a 7.62 by 54 rim chamber, but you would destroy that brass casing in an instant. Alright, now I got 357 Magnum. I don't know what that tangent was. I apologize about that. 357 Magnum in this lever action. For the most part, I fired 38 special out of this thing. I did fire like 2 or 3 rounds of 357 just to make sure that this rifle was functioning properly, but I'm definitely way more adverse with 38 special in this thing than I am with 357. This is what I would use against larger game. This 357. This is a hollow point and then a soft point, I think. Oh boy, that is significantly more powerful. Yeah, I would definitely feel 100% comfortable with this right here, using it on like a deer or a hog or something like that. That one seemed less powerful. Alright, these are different, like my 357 and my 38s are just kind of a mishmash of miscellaneous ammo I grabbed from a bag, so one of those was definitely hotter than the other one was. Alright. Well, the 94 action is definitely a very strong action, and it should have no problem at all handling 357, considering that its larger counterpart, the 86, was able to handle some pretty significant loads. Alright, well, ladies and gentlemen, this was a fun time. I definitely enjoyed bringing these rifles out. I say these rifles because I did technically bring out a 30-30 as well. I don't have any 30-30 ammunition, and 30-30 ammunition is quite difficult to find, and this video isn't really about the 30-30. It's more so about me showing off my first lever action. So, thanks for watching, folks. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. Description down below has a link to all sorts of stuff. I think that's all I say in my outros, so I'm gonna say, hey, I got something literally on the stove that I'm just remembering I have on the stove, so I'm gonna go hurry up inside. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.